Okay, welcome back. And for those of you just tuning in, I am joined by Isht Vatsa. He's an amazing immigration attorney. Not only does his firm handle and assist corporations with obtaining and maintaining the visas for their employee base, but his firm also is assisting people with potential deportations or now affected by this sweep that's happening in Florida. So, East, I want to jump back into our conversation because this is so interesting and it's so important that we get this message out, especially to those that might be fearful of
Yeah.
what their status is. So, for those of you in the audience, you may remember everything was about the dreamers. Let's protect the dreamers. Let's get the DACA on board, give them at least certain protections because these were children brought over here without obviously their consent when they're only 5, 6 years old or something. Now, fast forward, these what was once kids or young 20-year-olds are now in their 40s, things like that. And we are in an environment that is, to say, hostile towards those that may not have proper documentation. So, what are some of the hurdles or pitfalls that someone that would be a dreamer, as we used to call them, and we still do, would have to look for? And what are some of the issues for them not to be that may make them not fall within the DACA?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of individuals that may have qualified as DACA recipients in the past can't enter DACA now, right? Because DACA is really mainly focused right now on extensions renewals, right? For current DACA holders. So that's kind of the first main constraint, Alina. And then a lot of individuals that are under DACA, they don't have a valid status, right? So they have lawful presence here and they can work here potentially through EADs and other items, employment authorization documents and other items that issue, but they don't have a valid lawful status, so it makes it very difficult for them to adjust status or to change status, right? Status is an annoying concept in a way because in order to change it or to adjust from it, you need to at least maintain it, right? Or preserve the status that you currently have or lawfully extend it, right? So that's another issue facing dreamers. And then a lot of dreamers entered without inspection or in the immigration communities, they're known as EWI, right? Entered without inspection,
Mm-hmm.
EWIs. So that creates another situation as well in terms of difficulties that they face, either adjusting or finding longer term permanent solutions to getting lawful permanent residency or at least some sort of status stability.
I'm glad you mentioned that. So, because again, I tend to like my basis is, my perception is based on like my clients and their things. So, I have clients that husband is US born citizen
Hmm.
and his wife, unbeknownst to that, I mean, she was brought over when she was just a few years old, right?
Hmm.
But because her parents went back and crossed over all the times without inspection, I guess.
Right.
So he was trying to apply for residency for his wife, but it's been denied based on that. So you're having a young child that is
Yeah.
penalized because them without a voice. I mean, and
Right. Right.
we're in a country that 18-year-olds are minors. They're not to be able, they can't make legal decisions, things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
How do you get around that then? Because here you're
So
a young girl. That's
yeah, so that there is a waiver, right? So as you know, Lena, right? Because I'm sure this also applies to family law, but in most types of law, if not all of them, there is the rule and then there's the exception, right?
Mhm.
So there is an exception in immigration law, thankfully, and it's called the 601A waiver. And you could waive that unlawful presence. And then after you waive that unlawful presence, you could go to a consulate, right, to a U.S. consulate that would be willing to admit you to go ahead in there. You have no other deportability bar, and you could effectively consular process to a green card at that point, right? It is, practically impossible to adjust status if you've entered without inspection, because that is one of the requirements to adjust status. So if you can't adjust, you can always consular process, right? So that's the exception. But even in order to consular process, you want to make sure that you get that unlawful presence washed away through that 601A waiver.
Okay, that's good. I'm gonna thank you. That was free legal advice that I can pass on to my clients. Well, hey, I have to, strike while the pan is hot. So, I guess this is what, in listening to you and hearing this, one of my biggest concerns is that you are having these raids now, and you are having people that are being targeted, and it's racial profiling, because I assure you, if I'm running down the avenue and I'm blasting my Spanish music, I probably would not be pulled over, and let's say I was speeding, pulled over, and that I would have an issue,
Right.
But then I started thinking about this, because also, I believe it was through executive order, Trump removed any of the temporary protective statuses for Cubans, Venezuelans, and Haitians. And I am absolutely aghast at that, especially you're in Miami.
Right.
You know how strong the Cuban lobbying efforts are for that. So what do you say to these people who are coming from Cuba? I mean, I have a Cuban background. I'm Cuban. And so here they flee an authoritarian government, absolute poverty and destitution and potential torture. And now they've lost that status. Am I correct in that?
So right now, Alina, actually, for both temporary protective status, and they call it CHNV parole for Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans, right? CHNV parole, both are currently still in place because of federal action in the courts, right? So again, getting kind of back to that messy system of government that we candidly have. So right now, they're still in place, right? But you're right, that could be taken away. So there should be other options that those individuals are considering. If they do have a potential asylum claim, right, that should be something they consider. Now, that's not something to take lightly, right? Because asylum needs to, you need to show particularized harm to yourself as a member of a particular social group as to why you can't return back to your home country, right? That's a pretty high bar to meet. But if you do meet that bar, that's an avenue for you to consider. For Cuban nationals specifically, there is actually the Cuban Adjustment Act, which does allow you to apply for adjustment of status after 1 year, as long as your entry into the United States was valid, right? So there are all of these avenues that exist. And I mean, there's really no point, I think, in living in fear. Even if these parole items are removed, it's very important to have all of your legal documentation, everything in place. Make sure you apply for the right forms of relief at the right time. And if you choose to depart, you don't do so out of fear. You choose to do so after you've considered all of your other legal avenues, right? And then you choose to depart kind of on your own terms, knowing that you're not subject to any of those unlawful presence bars as well that can also impact you. So, whether you choose to stay or whether you choose to depart, those decisions should be informed by how the immigration law is acting upon you, not a fear-based decision.
And what I would suggest, and I provide this advice all the time, one of the best preventative measures you can take as an individual is getting with the right attorney. And I will say, Isht, you are the right attorney, because not only does your firm handle things like on the employment basis, which is supposedly Trump and his administration are for, and bringing high technological people and advancing that. But more importantly, I want everybody to know that not only just go to Extraordinary Immigration PLLC. However, it is also so important to have the right attorney, because I'm also seeing down at where I'm at up here to you is sometimes people are just going to notaries to have them help them with the paperwork. And that is, I'm going to tell you right now, that is foolish and scary, because what you need is someone who is savvy. And I'm going to say it. If you have an immigration issue, whether you are an employer, an employee, or you are looking at making sure to secure your status, contact Isht at 305-391-2105. And we're also going to have his information on our nowmediatv.com website so that they can get a hold of you. I am so grateful that you came back on, Isht. I do love having you. And I look forward to having you back again, because I'm sure it's going to be very heated and interesting with the legal battle, especially now with what Florida's doing under Governor DeSantis and the legislature's just recent passing of these laws. So I want to thank you again. And we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we're going to continue to discuss matters that are important and affect we the people. I'm telling you,